They say that Christmas is the most wonderful time of the year. If you asked me when I was about 6 or 7, I probably would have agreed. I remember rushing downstairs 3 hours before I normally wake up and looking at all the wonderful presents that Santa left me. When it's time, I would shred open every box with my name on it and then run around the house playing with every toy that my little heart desired. And yet, my parents would be baffled every year when eventually my toys would become old news, as they said. It didn't take long before I treated it like a hunk of plastic. How many of you can relate with that one? I've often thought about how crazy children of that age are when they neglect their things just after they receive them. And then I think about how we do the same thing, even though we're older. I mean, how many of you have bought a brand new iPhone only for a new one to come out just a year later? Or maybe you buy new clothing, not because the old ones don't fit anymore, but because the new ones are cooler or trendier. It seems kind of silly, doesn't it? Interestingly enough, Jesus warns us against that very trap in Luke 12:15. He says, be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. Listen, this trap isn't just silly, it's deadly. We cannot let an immersion in stuff pull us from an immersion in God, because He's the only source of life that we can draw from. I mean, there's a reason that Jesus speaks so strongly about the cost of following Him. He says in Matthew 16:24, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, pick up his cross, and follow me. To me, that sounds a bit dramatic at first. But when we read verse 25, it makes sense why this is so. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. This means that we as Christians are called to pursue God with our entire being, even to the point of taking up a cross. It may be kind of extreme, but we have to realize that in John 6:35, Jesus says, I am the bread of life. He who believes in me will not hunger. He who believes in me shall never thirst. Don't you see? Jesus is everything worth living for. Too often we just leave Him aside in search of something better, even though there is nothing better. God provided us with the greatest gift we could think of. Imagine this. If I give you $100,000 to do renovations on your house, but instead of spending that money on your house, you go back to your hotel and spend that money on the room you're staying in, you'd be pretty strange. In the same way, the fact that God gives His Son to die for us so we can have life, and we as Christians don't pursue God with our entire being, you have to admit, is also pretty strange. I mean, what do we even think would be better? Food is awesome. I'll admit that. But the bread of life is better than any food. And yeah, scrolling through Twitter, that may pass the time. But listen, flipping through Proverbs can change your life, right? And that boy or girl you're chasing, sure, they may be great, but listen, there is a greater God who's chasing after you. If God is actually better than anything else we could ever hope to gain, then why are we spending our time, money, and efforts on anything else? Do you know what this means? If you want to follow Jesus, you have to give up the world. Even though that may seem like a lot, what God has in store for us is better than whatever we could ever think we could ever get. So, let's go and pursue things that last, rather than things that will eventually become a hunk of plastic. Like Jim Elliot once said, he is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain that which he cannot lose. Thank you.